Thank you, sir.
Good.
And let's make you get settled before we start.
And want to ask a question, if you will sort of repeat the question, then go into the answer. So I'm going to say, for example,
Okay, I'm good,
would you mind
Tom.
saying your full name and spelling it, and you say, well, my name is Ben Martin.
Okay.
And, okay,
Okay.
all right, we're good?
We're good.
All right. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for asking, Tom.
Well, my pleasure, believe me. Why don't we just start, if you don't mind, tell us who you are and how you spell your name.
Okay, my name is Ben Martin. I spell it just like it sounds, B-E-N, M-A-R-T-I-N.
And then let me ask you, do you have a pronoun that you prefer?
He,
That sounds like a good pronoun to me.
okay.
And then, would you mind talking a bit about where you were born and kind of where you were raised, and also how you were raised? And let's start with that.
Okay, home for me is Lyons, Georgia, a small rural town about 75 miles west of Savannah. My grandmother, in fact, lived in Savannah most of my growing up, so I spent a good bit of time back and forth here as well. But spent all of my growing up life in Lyons. That was home, born there. My mother still lives there in the same house that I grew up in, and so that's kind of home. How I was raised in a very just traditional small town family. Father was a mail carrier and a farmer. Family ran a livestock market, so it's kind of agribusiness world, and that's kind of where I grew up and the world I grew up in.
Are you a public school kid?
Partway public school, partway small Christian school.
And then your path to ministry?
Path to ministry was second career. Went to college, came back from college, went to work for Georgia Power. Worked 6 years for Georgia Power. Had significant experience, I guess, with Christ in my life, and sort of coming to. I grew up in the church, but very marginally involved as a young adult. But found my way back into church. Kind of influenced by, strongly influenced by a Savannah girl, Sally Nettles, that grew up here, who came to be the youth pastor at our church, and pulled my wife and I in to begin helping with students, and from that into a call into full-time ministry. Went to seminary, and was ordained in the United Methodist Church, and that's been 36 years. I've been serving churches for 36 years since then.
Oh, my gracious. Well, let me just say on to everyone, you're wearing it well.
Hang on a second, Tom. Let me
Thank you.
just do a little change a little thing here.
Okay.
Let me fix this for you. Like that. There we go.
Just straighten you up for the camera.
Okay.
And when you also, whenever you ask a question and you answer it, if he says, you can say, I started with I, or sort of begin it like it was, you were telling the story without the
As if Tom wasn't here.
as if Tom wasn't there. Like
Okay.
I,
Okay.
so you can, that's what you got a beginning, a sentence to the
Okay.
right there. Or we, or however it is that you're.
Did you know
Relate to
Sandy
the
Clark?
question.
Yeah, I had met Sammy a number of times in my young ministry.
We're
We're
not
good. We're good, Tom.
We're on camera or
Yep.
off camera?
We're on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me ask you, you mentioned Sally Nettles as someone who was already active in the Methodist ministry, and that person influenced you. I go back and think about a man named Sammy Clark. Is that somebody you remember as well?
I do remember Sammy. I remember him from early days of my ministry. At that point, he had moved. He was chaplain at Oxford College, and still took a lot of, but had spent time in the mission field, and so I heard him speak numerous times about his experiences at different United Methodist events, largely. So didn't know Sammy well, just well enough to speak to him when I saw him.
Are there ministers that you have known through the years that were in the pulpit during the civil rights days that have stories that they told that kind of ring in your ear even to this day?
Edward Caruth would certainly be one that was influential to me, that walked in the church through some of those really difficult days at the church. Jack Key would probably be another. Both of those men are deceased now, but just were influential in my ministry, and I know that those were impactful days for them, and difficult and challenging days for them.
And then let me ask you if I could, how long have you been at Wesley, and what's your experience been like there compared maybe to some of the other congregations you serve?
Okay. I've been at Wesley Monumental United Methodist for 11 years, so it's come and gone pretty quickly. It's been a great experience. Wesley is an incredible church, downtown, urban, traditional, in style church. It was a very different experience for me. I grew up in a small rural town. Most of my pastoral experience were in more county seat style towns. I spent 9 years in Springfield in Effingham County, just north of Savannah, 30 miles out of Savannah, but two different worlds. Being at Wesley as a downtown urban church and being at Springfield as a county seat town just outside of it. Spent 8 years, been 9 years in Springfield, 8 years in Rennes, Georgia, another county seat style town, and served some small rural churches before that. So Wesley was a different experience. Wasn't sure how this sort of country boy would fit in this more urban world, but I've been there 11 years. I guess we fit in okay. But it's been a good experience, and it's been I think it's been a growth experience for me to be in a church that's far more diverse, theologically, politically, socially, and that's been healthy for me in growing my own view of God and the church and the church's place in the world.
And then in the other congregations that you served in other communities, was there a strong interfaith current that ran through the community, or have you found that the interfaith current here in Savannah tends to be a little stronger, a little weaker? Is there any way to make a comparison about that?
Serving in other places, I wouldn't say there was a strong interfaith, but there was a strong interdenominational connection. So that in those small towns, you had strong connections with the Baptist church or the Presbyterian church or the Lutheran church or the thing else. The ministers had pretty close relationships. They were small communities. So everybody knew everybody, and you went from church to church. You did a lot of things together. What I find in Savannah has been there is more of an interfaith connection. For instance, we were backdoor neighbors with Mikveh Israel, and have had a beautiful relationship with them. In fact, as I speak today, we're meeting in their fellowship hall every Wednesday night for dinner and Bible study because we're doing renovation on our building, and we've done that back and forth with them over the years, as well as sharing in ministry experiences with them through some shared ministries that other people are part of too, things like Backpack Buddies and other ministries that Rabbi Haas and I are both committed to in the community.
Why don't we talk a little bit about what you've at Wesley? I mean, can you talk a little bit about the role that some parishioners play in the larger community, or how do you think about the role of congregation in community in your own mind, and how is it really expressed as you see it congregationally at Wesley?
Okay. At Wesley, kind of our philosophy for mission really has been that it doesn't have to be ours, so that we don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. There are plenty of effective organizations already doing ministry in multiple areas that we would want to impact the community in, say food scarcity or homelessness or veterans, and so all of those ministries we feel like are things that we should help resource with people and with financial resources. So that's been our model of mission in the community, as opposed to saying Wesley has a homeless ministry, or Wesley has a food ministry, or Wesley has a ministry to veterans, or Wesley has whatever, because there are plenty of people out there already equipped to do that, but they need our help. If you go to I think any social service organization that's doing ministry in this community to people that are vulnerable, people in need, you'll find Wesley members on their boards, often chairing their boards, that have had Wesley's had a long historical impact on the community through these organizations by our congregation's participation in them. And that's what we encourage people to do. We encourage people to find a mission in the community to plug themselves into, and can give you any number of those organizations that Wesley members have had significant impact on.
Well, that might be a good thing if you have examples of people and congregationally who are active in the larger community. I mean, I'd love to hear those examples, and don't be shy.
Yeah. Well, I think I think about Pat Monahan and his impact at Union Mission, former city manager here, member at Wesley, who really helped Union Mission organizationally and get on its feet financially. But it goes way back from that. Elmo Weeks was on that Union Mission board for decades and decades, and served in this community through Union Mission. We have a newer member, she's been here a few years, who was in the film industry most of his career, named Mark Lindsay, who is now the CEO of Boys and Girls Clubs of Savannah, and felt a call into that kind of service vocation as opposed to what he had always done previously in the film industry. The Tiny House Project here in Savannah, tiny houses for homeless veterans. We had numerous people participate heavily in that with our men. Nick Hitt, local contractor and Wesley member, took a great lead in that and organized our men around it. We had lots of talented men who did work around that. Carl Pettigo being one of those men who spent an enormous amount of time building furniture for those houses, and we had lots of people plug in tiny house. One of the most, I would think, influential that just was kind of born out of Wesley, a man named Jack Raskowiak. Jack moved down here from New Jersey in his retirement and had volunteered a little bit in New Jersey with an organization called Urban Promise. A guy named Bruce Main had started that. It's really a global ministry now, but he'd volunteered there a bit, and it works. It's basically after school for inner city at-risk children. Jack moved to Savannah as a 70-year-old retired guy and decided that there were at-risk inner-city children in Savannah that somebody needed to do something for. So Jack, with little experience other than just a little volunteering, went out and began to raise money, went out to different places, set up a table in communities down off Farm Street and other places, and just invited people, if your kids need somewhere to be after school, somewhere that'll be safe, somewhere to help them learn, somewhere we can pour into their lives and develop their faith. And the ministry that was born of that is called Urban Hope. Urban Hope continues. Jack has been deceased for a number of years now, but Urban Hope continues to be a really important ministry for after-school care and summer care for inner-city at-risk kids. Lots of Wesley members picked up, served in that. Cassie Beckwith was one of the ones that stepped up after Jack's death, or while Jack was still living, but then after Jack's death. Other people have chaired that board. Travis Thomas, Jason Pettigo is the chair now. So Wesley has played a huge role in that because it was sort of born out of Wesley. Urban Hope was. We have people plugged in. The Living Vine, which is a ministry over in Midtown for unwed mothers that have nowhere to go while they're pregnant, waiting the birth of their baby, and then some after. We've had folks that volunteer there every week to teach. We do their lawn care, just all kinds of participation over there. This last year, we've been doing a lot of work with food scarcity organizations that help feed people. So we weekly are collecting food. Nell Bordeaux, our associate pastor, she's our missions pastor as well. So she really could tell you more about these things than me. She is outstanding in leading people into getting involved in mission and ministry in the community. But so she's led that drive. Our United Methodist Women Backpack Buddies in the city has fed countless children over the years as part of that. And then, of course, we've been an integral part of Wesley Community Center, which is a United Methodist ministry born in this community that serves women and children in the community. And so Wesley's had a really significant role. We're not far from them geographically, but it also is one of a ministry that was part of our district that we're part of. So we've continued to support them strongly financially, board membership, volunteering there, doing work on it.
And what role do they play, and where are they actually physically located?
What role do they?
Yeah, what actually goes on in that building, and where is the building actually located? This is actually a physical space.
Yeah, Wesley Community Center is up on Bull Street. They have a couple of different they have two different locations, but
Excuse me for a second. Could you start that one again, Wesley? Ron, just start that again, because Tom, you stepped on him in the middle of it.
Okay.
My bad.
That's all right.
Yep, okay.
Wesley Community Center is a long established ministry for women and children in the Savannah community. The main building is up on Bull Street, not that far from our church at Wesley Monumental, and they serve. They have a preschool that serves inner city children. They do job training and interview practice for women who are particularly single moms. Is one of their. They do food distribution, just largely ministry to single mothers and children.
And then let me shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about something that happened recently in Savannah, and just you folks, the church is on Calhoun Square, and Calhoun Square has gone through a change recently, and I'm curious, what was the impact of that change on the church? How did the church impact that change? And I'm offering this as an example of the relationship of congregation to community, literally right outside its front door.
Right. I wouldn't say that we were an integral part of making that change, but we certainly have we embraced that change, and we're a part of the celebration and dedication of the new name of the square. We participated in that. Our choir sang at it. I had a prayer at the event. So we very much have embraced that change, and are honored to sit on Taylor Square now.
And then that leads me to ask about the politics of that. Were pretty hot politics. There's been some pretty hot politics around recently as well, and that was a congressional race where there were two people in your congregation who were running for the same seat. Help me understand how that all works.
Yeah, political involvement at Wesley. As I say, Wesley's a very politically diverse church, and nowhere has that been more reflected than a recent congressional race where Buddy Carter, long incumbent, serving that seat, had Wade Herring, who at the time was our administrative board chair, and them been the same congregation with each other for many years, run against each other. We naturally, as a congregation, tried to not particularly take sides in that race, but really to just, I found it really a rich thing, a good thing that our congregation could have two people that are so different politically in the same congregation, and be able to call that church home. Kind of what we tried to believe is that there's room for everybody at our church, and we can love and respect each other even if we disagree with each other, and that's kind of what we hope to be at Wesley. That just the fact that those two folks running against each other in that same race, to me, was a reflection of our diversity and our ability to hold a congregation together around that diversity.
One of the things that Wesley is sort of famous for right now, as I understand it, is the number of young families that have come back and embraced a urban church. How has that happened? And the reason I'm bringing this up is it is the relationship of congregation to community.
Yeah.
Just a second. When you move, excuse me, when you move the paper around, we can hear that. So try to just,
Okay.
If you don't mind putting it down, I might.
Yeah.
Sure.
If you don't need it,
Yeah.
Nah, I don't really need it.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry. Continue, Tom.
Yeah.
About young families and
Yeah,
impact.
my understanding is that Wesley has a tremendous number of young families now, which is not usual sometimes for urban churches. I mean, how has that come about?
Well, Wesley's had a pretty significant transformation over the last, really, I'd say 17, 18 years. One of the things that happened there, they started a child development center called Eli's Place. Eli's Place started off just as a kind of mother's morning out, a day a week, to try to offer something to a handful of young mothers that might have been in the church at the time, having no idea it would have the kind of growth it had. Now we have about 150 children that are a part of that. It's a half-day program, so it kind of doesn't serve everybody, but it's drawn lots of young families to at least be exposed to Wesley. Families that probably wouldn't have driven downtown to a church like ours, very traditional downtown church that is not very convenient. They don't live downtown for the most part. And so that's one of the things is introduced young families there. And then our music, we have a real strong music program, and we have a children's music program that families have found really attractive. And there are about 160 or so children in that children's choir now, in 2 different ages of children's choir that come downtown every week, make their way down there with no place to park, and at the end of long days, and have their children there. So it's been pretty amazing to see. It's kind of graceful. People ask, how did we make that happen? I'm not sure that we did. It's just kind of an act of grace that God gave us the responsibility for a whole lot of children and young families. And so we hope, our goal is to help shape their faith so that they can live that faith out as they raise their children and they live in this community, and that they have an impact on this community just as citizens of it and participants in it.
When you sort of close your eyes, when you have a minute to just be quiet and personally reflect, and I'm imagining that some days there are not many of those minutes, but when you think about this phrase, faith in action as a phrase, what does that mean to you?
It means faith is not an idea that we believe. I think there's a lot of difference in belief and faith. Belief to me has a ring of certainty to it. Faith is to be able to live with the uncertainty of things, with a lot of unanswered questions. But faith is trusting enough to risk. It's to risk standing on something and working for something and living something out in spite of the fact that you may not have all the answers and you may have doubts around those answers. But so faith in action is what I believe about God and what I believe about myself as created in the image of God, and my responsibility to be at work in a world that belongs to God, but that God has entrusted to us, and that we're to make a difference in that world, primarily to love people, and to share the love of God with people and help people understand the value that every person is, no matter how vulnerable or broken or wounded or needy that they are beloved and valuable and beautiful and cared for by God. And so faith in action for me is that we communicate that message by what we do, not just what we do on Sunday morning. Sunday morning, it might be where we draw the most people in, but it's, I don't want to say the least important thing we do, but in some ways it's not the most important thing we do. It is the place we hope to equip and inspire people to be living their faith out, putting their faith in action in the community. So we need Sunday morning. We need worship. We need to gather people where they stop in the middle of the craziness of their schedules and busyness of their lives and recenter themselves around who they truly are, so that they can go back out there, not forgetting that, not getting swept up in the pursuit of success and all the things that call us, that tempt us to in the culture, but rather to go back out there and feel like, my faith is essential to who I am, and that has to come through in every part of my life, whether it's my vocational life and how I work, whether it's my political life and how I vote, whether it's how I spend my money, what generosity I live with, how I use my energy and my time, which are both scarce. So that's, to me, when I think about faith in action, I see it not so much as people who are serving in our church. That's faith in action too, but it's folks that are serving outside our church because of what they experience at our church. So that's faith in action to me.
I think we should stop there, because that is faith in action.
Mm.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
This is great.
Well, glad to do it.
Yeah.
One I didn't mention that I should have. We were talking about putting faith in action in the community, and how that's impacted. Holly McCormick is a member of our church that got invited to participate in refugee resettlement ministry here through Inspiritus, and has just found that to be a calling for her. And she is really, really inspired and pushed and encouraged our church to be a part of that. So we have furnished countless apartments for families and moved them in for refugee families that are coming here from all over the world to be resettled and have a place to begin life again, coming out of places of persecution and oppression. And so she's been a model for me of what faith in action looks like in this community for people that oftentimes folks look suspiciously at and wonder, our whole issue of immigration but that's been her faith in action and really pushed us into a world of ministry that's been really important.
Good. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. You good?
Let's cut.
That's great.
Thank you. Stand by for Mickey to settle. There we go. Okay, anytime, Tom.
Ben, I know that there are many people at Wesley who are involved in the community in many different ways. Might you share a few examples?
Okay. One of the ministries that really has touched people's hearts at Wesley is called Family Promise. Family Promise Many, former Interfaith Hospitality Network, provides housing, temporary housing for circumstantially and temporary homeless families. And those families live in the church. The history has been they would move from church to church. A church would host them for a week. We'd provide spaces for them to sleep, meals for them. So our church got involved in that. I've done that for a long time, several times a year. But then they began to grow their ministry into some more permanent or longer term kind of housing for people. And so some of our Wesley members got involved in remodeling and building houses for them. And so we've been, I mentioned Nick Kidd earlier on tiny houses. He and Carl Pettigo that worked heavily on that have also worked heavily with a lot of other men out of our church to build two houses for Family Promise that have been able to place families in for a longer term period of time and not be in this process of moving back and forth from church to church to church. Lots of people have participated in Family Promise. We've raised significant money for them, and we continue to provide meals quarterly for them and work on housing situations for them, providing furniture and other items.
Well, thank you for being with us.
Thanks.
All right, good.
Thank you, guys.
My foot's back awake, and that's good too.
Gave you the time you needed.
Yeah, that's